the Obsession. So now that it's been officially released, how are you feeling? Are you feeling satisfied, like a weight's off your chest? Like how does it feel to have this body of work just out there in the world?
It's really cool. Like it's always kind of a weird experience because you spend a lot of time preparing for the release, and it's super busy, with finishing the album, then finishing the artwork, then doing all of the videos and the single releases. And it feels like you build up to this great, massive thing, which is like the release of the album. But when that actually happens, it turns 12 o'clock and then bloop, it's on Spotify. And like that's the only physical difference at that moment. And it always feels so weird because from that moment, everyone can listen to it, and that's huge. But you don't notice it when you're just there going, ha, my album is released now. So I always try to organize things around it. Like we did a pre-listening session with the band and with patrons a few days before the release to really celebrate it and to not just kind of run towards that moment, but also to actually celebrate that moment itself. And, you know, yeah, try to enjoy it.
Do you remember like what point did you start working on this album? Was it a very long process for you?
I think it was around the release of Tales from 6 Feet Under Volume 2, um, because I remember already thinking like, do I want to do another Tales record? Do I want to do another compilation? Or do I want to start working on a more traditional album straight away? And at that point, I had a lot of songs because, you know, the years before that, I'd been writing like very eclectically, going in all kind of different directions with the songwriting as well as the production. Um, and there were a lot of songs there which I liked enough to want them out there, but which I thought would not be a great fit for the album. So then I was like, okay, I'll do one more compilation album, and then I'll start working on the record. And I think that All You Are, which was released on Patreon, because I release a song every month on Patreon, and I made that a part of the songwriting process for this album. And I think that All You Are, I put that on Patreon in like September or October 2022, and I think that might have been the first one from the ones that are now on the album. Oh, the first one is obviously Self Revolution because that one was already on Tales Volume 1. But other than that, yeah, I think that was the first one.
Nice. That's awesome. That's a long process for this, but that's amazing. I love how you did that process though of kind of releasing the little songs and everything to just kind of build it up.
Yeah, and it was also nice because it wasn't like I was in full album mode the entire time, but like the song of the month that I did on Patreon just really became a part of my process for the album. So there was never a month where I was not working on the album at least a little bit. But then it went just song by song. And then at one point I thought, okay, I feel like this is going to be the selection. And that is also when that whole process, because for like the previous records, Tales 1 and 2, since they were compilations, they were just compilations of the songs that I released on Patreon as they were. But for this album, I very deliberately thought what I put on Patreon is going to be the first incarnation of these songs. But then I'm going to, give the songs the time and effort to grow, and I'm going to rewrite what needs rewriting, rearrange what needs rearranging. And in this, like the band was also very involved. Timo worked a lot on all of the arrangements for all of the songs, and everyone, of course, put their own spin to their performances of their parts on the tracks. Vikram came in, Vikram Shankar with some orchestral arrangements and additions and key work. So, um, like from that first incarnation to like their final version, a lot happened, and this was more concentrated in like really a few months of really hard work on the album.
That's awesome. I love how, yeah, you had the bandmates kind of come together and kind of this reuniting with this process. It was really awesome. I wanted to ask though, like what inspired the shift to more of a metal approach with this release?
Um, y- yeah, it's I think it's kind of more the question why the other two records before this were not. Like over the span of my career, like it's been mostly metal, like except for those two compilations. Um, and that had very much to do with the way that I started. The way that I started the Patreon was really to have a place to put songs that were not metal, that didn't fit what I was doing with Delain, and I would keep any metal ideas for like the next Delain songwriting sessions. That was the idea. But the band split, so it became my full-time focus. But then still I was kind of enjoying like experimenting in different genres because I'd been working within this certain framework for such a long time. And even though I really loved that framework, I like pancakes, but I'm not going to eat them every day. So I was kind of enjoying just branching out and doing different things all the time. And I think for Tales Volume 2, uh, I was already like putting more songs that could be like potentially metal back in the mix. They didn't maybe get their full metal potential because it was still things that I played on electronical instruments and on plugins. Since it was just me on those records. But like they already started coming back, and yeah, at that point that we were just talking about like around the release of Tales Volume 2, and I was really thinking like, okay, if I'm going to put like the full traditional album effort into this next record again, and I wanted to have a more cohesive sound, what sound do I want it to be? Like what feels the most like me, what do I enjoy the most? Where do I think that the songs shine the most? And that was, yeah. I mean, the obsession is the answer to that. It was a more heavier sound, and it was that in the basis, but of course, involving the band in that also made it a lot heavier, and a lot of choices that we made in the mixing and mastering process as well. So, um, yeah, it was a matter of going back to, if I want a cohesive sound, like what is that sound going to be? And yeah, and I kind of came back to the heavier realm.
Nice. Um, so this album definitely has some central theme of, the anxiety and the obsessive thoughts. Through this creative process, can you kind of walk us through, you know, transformation of like any personal issues that you had and like the emotions that you had trying to write this? Was there any moments that, you know, a certain song or a certain feeling got a little too personal or a little too much for you?
I guess so. Anywhere where I thought it really became too much or too, like I always think that it's fine if it's personal. I think it's fine if it's vulnerable. I even think it's fine if it's embarrassing. Like I had a moment where I thought, like in dopamine, for example, which was really about kind of the numbness that I experienced when I was taking certain antidepressants, and uh, I also experienced like a very physical numbness, and of course there was a moment where I thought, you've got the now I'm dying just trying to get off. And there was a moment where I thought, like, is this really something that I want to put on the album? That's quite um that is quite personal. But I feel like this is something that so many people also deal with. And I thought that it was really annoying when I was dealing with it that I really didn't know about that and that I also thought it was kind of taboo to talk about it. So for me, it really served a purpose to say, okay, this is kind of embarrassing, but I'm going to put it out there because maybe someone else is dealing with it and maybe they will feel a lot better if they hear this, you know? There's also been moments where I wrote things where I was like, yeah, this is personal and it sounds kind of cool, but I don't know if anyone will get better from listening to that. And um, yeah, those are the moments when I choose to not put it out. And there was one where I kind of hesitated because I really like how it turned out, but I also thought it might be maybe a little too dark. And this one, it was kind of a compromise. This was backup plan, and we put that as a bonus track on the vinyl, but it didn't make it to the album. It also had to do with the flow of the songs, of course, but I also, this is one of the songs where I sometimes wonder, like, is it too much? Does it still make people, for people who are focused on the lyrics, like, does the story I'm telling still, does it serve a purpose? Or is it rather, yeah.
Yeah. And I think, I know for me personally, I listen to the lyrics. I know a lot of people, they're just like, oh, but just listen to the music, let the music flow. I'm the kind of person that I love to listen to the lyrics. I like to analyze kind of the story behind it. And I connect to a lot of songs like that when it's just like, oh, this is deep, this is personal. I know
Mhm.
personally for me, I like it when, you know, it's kind of like the artist is just like, hey, by the way, like we're all experiencing the same thing too. So that's, and anytime I feel like anytime it's very emotional, it just kind of hits a lot harder in my mind.
Mm, mhm. Yeah.
Um, do you think the person that you were when you like first started writing this album is the same person you are now that it's out there and it's in the world, or do you feel like you've kind of personally and kind of emotionally changed throughout this writing process?
I do feel that I change a lot and I change from day to day. Sometimes it's hard to relate to my former self, even. Um, but I do still recognize and feel the stories, and I think that the songs that I have the deepest connection with are also the songs where I still feel the same as when I wrote them. The Exorcism is an example like that it's very hard for me to sing The Exorcism without feeling exactly why I wrote it in the first place. Um, yeah.
So more on exciting happy news.
Yes.
Um, so you took a long break, what was about 5 year break from touring? And now that you're getting prepared to hit the road again, how are you feeling? Nervous, excited? How, you ready
Both.
for it? I bet, yeah.
Yeah, no, both. I definitely feel like I have to, like mentally, I feel like I'm very ready for it. Physically, I'm a little under the weather now, so it's hard to imagine at this moment. But I also, yeah, you might see like I have like a treadmill standing behind me. I do the thing now where I sing the set while walking, running. Uh, Running is hard though. Like I'm still working my way up there.
Oh, I
Um,
bet, yeah. I can't even run like just breathing heavy, I can't imagine singing as well.
if I just do the set and take a brisk walk, that is very comparable to like for me the adrenaline level and like the heart rate level of being on stage, not even from just running around, but from the excitement.
Mhm.
So I try to get ready on a physical level for it, and yeah. Uh, any other level, I'm just very excited to get back on the road.
Excited to see all the fans too.
Yeah, exactly. Connect with audiences, be on the road with the band again. And we get to go with Vola, and I'm a big fan of Vola, so that's also very cool. So, yeah.
Nice. What can we kind of expect the set list to look like without too many spoilers, obviously, but will you be performing any material from Tales of 6 Feet Under, or is it just going to be mainly this album focused?
It's going to be mainly focused on this album, maybe also some from the Tales records. There is some that we really enjoy performing. However, like I feel like this album is really, the record that I want to reintroduce myself with, that I want to reintroduce ourselves with. So it makes sense to focus on that, and also really everybody really enjoys performing it. It's very different than it was when we were first performing the Tales records, because those were like straight from the basement to the stage, and like I had all these parts which I had done like digitally, and we still kind of had to figure out how to translate those songs to band performance. And this, of course, we already did for this record. Like everyone knows what they're doing. Everyone recorded their parts, worked on their parts. So it's a very different experience doing these songs now.
Nice. That's so exciting. I'm very excited to see you guys. Hopefully I'll be down in the pits taking photos and all.
I hope so too.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, I just wanted to see, was there anything you wanted to kind of shout out to your fans who've been there for you, supported you throughout your whole journey? Anything you want to kind of say to them before you hit the road?
Yeah, of course. I want to say thanks because I really, um, I mean, I've said this many times and I will probably say it a lot of times, but I feel like massively grateful for the fact that, after the band split, after pandemic, after everything, I've been able to, first of all, remain a full-time musician, which I thought was cool enough in itself. So I was very grateful for that when I released the compilation albums. But now to have made like such an ambitious effort, greatly through everyone's support, it feels wonderful. I hope people will enjoy the album. And yeah, I hope to maybe see them like in a venue somewhere on the road down the line. That would be wonderful. But either way, thanks so much. I don't take any of that for granted.